Welcome. I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Tatiana Plechenko. Hi, Tatiana.
Hi.
Hi. Just a little introduction. I first connected with Tatiana online, and then I was lucky enough to meet her in person at one of our first Childhood Redefined summits. It's been my pleasure to witness her unschooling journey so far, and I'm really excited to dive into her deschooling path with her today. So, to get us started, Tatiana, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Sure. So we are a family of four. My husband and I, we immigrated to Canada, both with our own families, him with his mom and me with my parents and my brother when we were teens. And soon after we immigrated, we met each other and have been together ever since for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So we went to university together here in Ottawa, Carleton U. We later traveled together after we graduated and settled down here in Ottawa and had kids. So Valerie is our firstborn daughter and she is 10, and Daniel is our son, he's 8. We have 2 cats. They just went out, so you won't see them. And yeah, they're big parts of our lives too, with their own unique personalities. One of our cats actually goes every day and visits this elderly lady who has Alzheimer's. She's being looked after by her husband and comes back home every night.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know. He's super sweet. And she loves him. And she actually recognizes him.
Oh,
she
really?
doesn't always recognize me, but she knows him.
That's awesome. So I'm curious to know, how did you discover unschooling, and what did your family's move to unschooling look like?
Sure. You were a big part of it, Pam. So before I had kids, I imagined myself as a very different parent. And I grew up in an environment where order, predictability, and higher education were valued a lot. And when I was younger, especially a teen, I rebelled hard against those. But when expecting my first child, I was surprised that in my mind, I was conforming to everything I ever rebelled to. So I thought I would have this perfect child who will feed on a schedule, who will sleep when it's time to sleep and eat when offered to eat. And we will have this perfect, predictable life. I'm going to be this perfect mother. And so what happened is that we were blessed with a very strong-willed child who would let us know from the very beginning that we've got it all wrong. And she would cry inconsolably and definitely not follow any schedule that I was still trying hard to impose on her. So I just literally threw my baby whisperers books away. I distanced myself for a while from family, friends who had a similar mentality, and just started to listen to my child. And I started to build the trust not only with her, but also with myself as a mother. I started to listen to my own voice. And we started to attachment parent. And at that time, I didn't know that there was a term like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that even now, I come across online people not liking labels, and I get it. But at the same time, I find them helpful to find like-minded people and finding your tribe, finding that support and mentorship. So then we started thinking of another child, and before we knew it, we were pregnant with another child. And we had 2 kids under the age of 2. So our way of raising them was different from everyone's expectations. And I had very little support or understanding of what we were doing. And it was very tough. And even though help was offered, but that was not the help we needed at that time. And I had no strength to deal with defensive family members. So it was easier to just do it all ourselves, even though it was not easy. So there was just physical and emotional exhaustion bundled up together. My cup was empty. And I knew what kind of parent I wanted to be, but I would find myself just resorting to the old pattern that I was brought up with. So I was reading your book, The Unschooling as a Hero Journey. And I remember you saying that there is always a herald on the journey that announces to us that there is a different way. And I had to sit with it for a while and think like, so was there a herald, and who was that herald? And it was very interesting because my herald now has 4 kids, and all her 4 kids go to school. But I remember the day when both of us were sitting next to a bathtub with one each of our children in the tub. They were little. And we were chatting, and I said, I think I'm failing my daughter. I am not the parent I want to be. I yell and I, behave in ways that I'm ashamed afterwards, after that happens. And I don't know what to do. And she said, my mother-in-law, she picked up this book from the library. It's called Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves by Naomi Aldert. And I think you might find it very helpful. So I got that book and I loved it. It finally gave me some tools to fill my brand new empty toolbox.
Yeah.
And I started making changes. They started to work. And I wanted to learn more because in her book, Naomi never mentions that she homeschools or unschools. And I started listening to her talks on her website, and the word unschooling came up. So again, another label, right? And I looked it up, and I started looking into the philosophy and learning more and more about it. And then eventually Anne Almond's name came up and her conference that she was hosting. I started reading your emails that you would send out every week, I think. There used to be an option, and maybe still there is an option to subscribe to those emails to receive them once a week about unschooling and what it is. And so we made plans to go to that conference in New York. It was a 10-hour drive for us. And before we went, both myself and Igor were reading the emails that you would send out, and they made a lot of sense to us, and we found them very helpful. And attending our first WeShine was a crucial turning point for us. It sort of truly sealed the deal because we saw people parent. We found mentors for ourselves. I went to every talk at that conference, and I found it very, very helpful. And what I realized for myself then, that I needed to do a lot of work on myself, that I needed to establish firmer boundaries in my life, and walk the walk that we wanted to create and envision for ourselves. And for Igor, he's been on board with the philosophy itself, but he saw it working for children that week. And there was a big shift for him because we were there. It was a campground, and we were there Monday to Friday, where that was just the unschooling families. And he saw how people treat their kids differently, what kind of relationships they have. But then on Thursday, other families were moving in for the weekend. And that difference just struck him so much. And he said, you know, he came to me. He didn't say, there was no conclusion from him. He was just amazed at the difference. Yeah. And I think that was a turning point for him as well.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's right. I'd forgotten you guys were at We Shine too.
For a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. Now I remember. But oh my gosh, I love that. I love that story about how Igor was just in the place to see the contrast. That's really interesting.
He didn't go to any talks. He didn't do any work. That was just that for him.
Wow, that's really interesting. Now, I was curious, just quickly, you mentioned, you know, when Valerie was young and you decided to kind of toss away and cocoon for a while, you know, to kind of disconnect from the kind of messages that you didn't want to live. You wanted a new way. So I was wondering if there was some sort of, what was the kind of spark that made you decide, this isn't working, I want to try something different? Do you remember?
I think it was just her. Like it wasn't working for her.
Yeah.
So I
decided that's not, you wanted to find something that worked for her.
That's it. Yes. Like if my child is not happy being put to bed by herself and, you know, magically fall asleep, but carrying her in a sling, she does fall asleep, then I'm going to carry her in a sling because then she doesn't cry. So it was just listening to her, and I knew I wouldn't be able to listen to her or to my own voice if I kept listening to messages that were out there. So I just pulled the plug that way. And I remember, and then because it's so like attachment parenting, I never heard about it. We were not brought up that way. Everybody would tell you, you know, you're spoiling your child if you're carrying them around all the time. But my midwife, and like, bless her, she was amazing. She had to be with me only for 6 weeks, right? But I would call her after 6 weeks and, you know, freak out on the phone and be like, okay, so Frederick, when can I put her down? She's been in a sling all day. I need to take a shower. She's like, well, Tatiana, you know, there are those slings you can take in the shower with you. I'm like, Frederick, this is not what I'm asking. I don't want her to shower with me. I want to take a shower. When will I be able to put this child down? And she said, when she's 18.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that gave me a perspective.
Yeah. Oh, that's
she had 4 kids herself. And I think her youngest was 18 at that time.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love the story of the Herald. I love even the idea of looking back and just kind of processing our journey, because it helps us understand it better. And I think it helps us understand ourselves better. I laugh. I still laugh that I feel like my Herald was a school principal.
Oh, wow.
You know, that it was at the private school where Joseph was going, and he'd been there for months, and we had a meeting, and so this was probably 6 months in, and she's like, we have to, we'll start looking for his gifts, you know, and he was doing better there than in the public school. But that was the point where like, oh, if you have to start looking now, this still isn't a great environment for him where he can shine, you know? So that was my, okay, I'm going to keep looking for another way. And that was what kind of led me down that road. It's so fascinating. Anyway, we should probably move on. What was the most challenging area of deschooling for you, and how did you work through that?
So for me, the most challenging area was to let go of my expectations of how things are supposed to be, and how my kids are supposed to be, and how I am and my partner and our relationship is supposed to be.
All the things. But yeah, expectations, right? Right? Yeah.
So letting go of that control and, finding the beauty of how things are, and, how beautiful people are. And I don't need to go around making them any better way than they already are. So the things that I struggled the most in general, as far as unschooling goes, is that I struggled with electronics. And one of my kids just loved it so much. And the thing is that he not only loved the tool to use specifically for his interest, he also used it as a relaxation or to get away from overstimulation. So he would be on it a lot, even when he was much younger. He's 8 now. He's actually less on it now than he used to be, because he found other ways to cope with situations that he found overwhelming before. So as long as I struggled, our relationship struggled. So I don't think I struggled at the beginning. I think I started struggling like midway. And I was faced before a choice to either choose our relationship that was just beautiful and connection, or to get stuck in my beliefs and lose that trust that we had built. So, and because my judgment of his choice were coming across as judgment of him, it was just a terrible feeling for him to have, and he would completely close down and not let me in anymore. And that was not a good feeling for me. So there was a big shift for me, because when I went to WeShine, to the conference, the description of WeShine was a celebration of unschooling. And I always felt, I know that wasn't the case and I could ask those questions, but that was my internal process where I felt I couldn't ask questions like that at WeShine, just because they were not very celebratory of unschooling, I guess, but my doubt. But it was helpful when I went to Childhood Redefined and I could actually ask all those questions and get all those answers. And so when I came back from Childhood Redefined, and actually Facebook sent me a reminder today that was exactly 2 years ago I was at Childhood Redefined right now. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I came back, I joined him in his games and his shows. I looked at his world through his eyes. I decided to let my fears go. I decided to trust that he was going to be okay. And, like goosebumps, he started talking to me again. He started sharing his world with me again. He welcomed me back with his arms wide open as though, nothing happened. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I
think that was, I'll jump in because I got goosebumps too. And it feels like a kind of a leap into the unknown. Like you said, when you came back, you decided, you chose to just step past the fears. You know, I'm going to try this. I am going to, join him in his world. I'm going to see through his eyes, through his perspective, and see what he's loving about this. And that he welcomed you back. He wants to share and connect with people. Children want to share and connect what they love with the people that they love, right? So if we can get past our fears and step in and join them there, it's it's a life-changing experience, isn't it? Right?
It is.
It really is.
Yeah. And and like what you're saying about jumping into that unknown, it's not easy. And I would sit and listen to talks at Childhood Redefined, and they were inspiring, and we would have group conversations that were also, again, redefining our perceptions of the world. But then I would still at lunch sit with Anna Brown and be like, Anna, just talk me through this. I'm not getting it. I'm still, I feel like I'm bumping my head off at a wall, and she coached me through it. And she said, because another thing that I wanted to talk about, that I was struggling with food as well. So my two big were that and food. And she looked at me and she said, Tatiana, what's in your tea? What's in your cup? And I thought she was serious. I was like, well, I'm having tea, She's like, how did that just make you feel? Did it make you feel judged? I'm like, yeah, like that was mean. She's like, exactly. Like, do you want kids to feel that way? I'm like, no. And that struck with me, it struck with me. She showed me how that makes them feel.
That's beautiful. Nicely done, Anna.
Yeah, and it still sits with me, I still remember that.
Yeah. I remember the food discussions there when I was sitting outside.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
I didn't know how you guys handled that. Some questions were pretty harsh.
But that's it. Well, I mean, to me, that's the interesting part. And it's why I love talking, to different people on the podcast and the different perspectives, seeing unschooling through their eyes and how it came to them, because it's fascinating and it's so individual, right? But underneath, there are some things that really help us understand how unschooling works, how it flows, how our relationships support it, etc. And just being able to put you in your child's shoes for a few seconds there, Anna, by asking that question, right? That was a light bulb moment for you. And it's different for all sorts of people, isn't it? What will be that connecting point? And I love that. That's one of the things, that has always struck me about you. Over the years, you still always came back and you still kept asking your questions, right? You still wanted to know. And I absolutely love that. And I will keep trying to answer, and you keep trying to say it in different ways, maybe bring different examples, different questions to ask yourself to help you find out what your light bulb moment is, right? What will connect with you to help make things make sense. So we got into why I love doing this. And I love that you shared that story about that light bulb moment, because that might be it for someone, to figure out a way to put themselves in their child's shoes. To me, that ability kind of comes along with the understanding that it's another level of understanding that adults and children are all people, right?
Yeah.
That it's totally valuable for us to put ourselves in their shoes, and that what they see and feel in a moment and understand from a moment is completely as valid and valuable as what we see in that moment. They're just another person in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like what you're saying about the aha moments is that people can tell you what it's like or what it is, and you might nod and be like, yeah, okay, but I kind of get it. But I think until you have that moment where you do get it clearly, when you see it clearly, only then you can, only then your perception changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I encourage people to keep learning. And I encourage people to, if you've read things that made sense to you, and that read or listened to or watched, whatever, but to revisit those things like 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, because you're bringing a different perspective to them, you will get different things out of them. You will have different aha moments. It's like, oh, I understood that. It made sense. Like when you and Igor were first reading the emails, right? Which I
Mm-hmm.
turned into the What is Unschooling book, just to
Oh,
update it
that's
for
it.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, but, if you go back and read that now, you will see different things. It will connect with you more deeply because now you have some experiences to tie with it, right? Now
Yeah.
you have those experiences with your son, and you can get more depth out of it, I think. Anyway, it's fast. That's one of the things I love about deschooling, and why we talk about how it takes time. It's not that first, read through, understanding it. This makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense, off we go. It really
Yeah.
is so much about peeling our own layers back and really
That's
getting to a
it.
depth.
That's it. It's those layers, right? Like there are so many layers. And I think at the heart of it, like the biggest aha in general at the heart of the schooling for me was how it's healing. It's actually healing. It's our own healing journey. And that it's all about me. It's me who needs to heal. It's me who needs to make those changes. Everybody else around me is fine. It's me, and once I heal myself, only then my perception can change, and I will just see world differently. I will not be triggered. It's my issues that need to be peeled and need to go. But I think the challenges along the way is that process triggers us, is that we get defensive. And like I went to WeShine 2 years in a row, and then I didn't come back for a couple of years because I would get that triggered, I would get that defensive. But I think that defensiveness is from not doing the work. Like if we actually commit to the work and we keep on doing it and we keep on wanting to change, then I think maybe that defensiveness can be avoided and years would not be lost along the way.
But I think
Yeah.
that is part of our journey too. But and you are 1,000% right that these things trigger us, right? There are things that do that, and it's really hard. But to say, to understand that those things that are triggering us are really where our next big chunk of work is to do, right? I still remember, Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way. The thing that you want to avoid is really when you can, is really what's going to give you a huge growth spurt when you dive into it, when you're ready to dive into it. And I don't want to come across as beating people up. I mean, if you need that space before you have the energy to do it, you need that time. But to understand that what we are most reacting to, most defensive about. There, you use that word. That's right. What we're feeling most defensive about and what we're most pushing away, if we can remember that, that's probably a clue as to where we might want to start digging. I think that that can be helpful for people.
Yes, and I also find that that space of defensiveness is the space of victimhood. And we can get stuck in that victimhood for a very, very long time. And that almost gives us an identity, and that it almost like feels good, even though it doesn't. And we justify our choices and our decisions and how we want to be. But if we can let that victimhood go faster and not get stuck in that vertex of that defensiveness, then we can come out of it earlier and come out as a warrior and owning our story. Because I think that defensiveness comes a lot from our own guilt or the feeling of inadequacy of what we've done before. So I think it's forgiving ourselves and moving forward.
Yeah. Back to that. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Right. Because it really is. I love that's the name of one of Anna's talks in childhood redefined.
That's it. Yeah.
Because it's really true. You know, back to, and it ties right back to the beginning when you were talking about expectations being the most challenging area, right? Because the expectations are us projecting onto other people. But really, when you get to the point where you understand they all have their own choices and they're wonderful, they're their journeys to take, right? Their lives to live, not me to control. I can control me. And then that's when you get to that point where you realize, oh, you know, all this work is mine to do. All these layers are mine to peel back. And you're right, when you're stuck in one of those layers, you're seeing everything around you through that lens. Like you said, that the story that you're telling yourself to justify keeping that layer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Tatiana.
The more...
Yeah.
No, it's just the more layers we peel, like the more layers we peel, the clearer the lens become, and the clearer we can see the world.
Exactly.
There's a little story, it's more of a joke, and you probably know it. It's like a woman keeps complaining to her husband that, like, she's looking through the window and she keeps complaining that her neighbor's laundry is very dirty, and she keeps on hanging that dirty laundry to dry. And day after day, she keeps telling him this. So the husband went and cleaned her window. So it wasn't the laundry, it was her window.
Oh.
And I think that's kind of how Deschooling works too, you know?
Yeah. How we, you know, judge other people around us because we're seeing it through our lens. That's brilliant. Okay, you mentioned some about Igor's journey, and you mentioned one of the aha moments that he had. I just wondered if there was any more stories or anything you'd like to share around his journey. You know, whether how new this was for him, how challenging, maybe what helped, how you helped him move through it.
Sure. Yeah, I asked him before the call. I said there's going to be a question like that, and I said, you know, how was your move to unschooling? And he said, from what?
From what? Oh, sweet.
I can share. Perfect. And I said, like, what should I share? And he said, just share whatever you want. I'm like, okay.
Thanks, Igor.
I can share from my perspective how it was.
Absolutely.
I don't know how it was for him. I think we walk together. We've been together for so long, and we always just walk together. I as I was learning new bits and pieces and things that really struck me, I would, run to him excitedly and share it with him. And he would always say that it makes sense to him. And at the very beginning, when I would get scared, and I would share with him that I'm scared and I think what we're doing is like really crazy, and he would meet me right there in my fear and reaffirm that it truly is crazy and we probably should stop doing it, So we would take one step forward, two steps back, until we get so comfortable in our path, and he would see the kids and he would, I guess, just get his own understanding of the process, that now or later I would share my concerns with him and he would say like, everything's fine, you're just let it go, it's all good. And what's interesting in Igor is that he is a very talented guy in many areas. And sometimes I think like, why would just one person be gifted so many gifts? Like, it's just not fair to so many other people. I mean, like, he's tall, good-looking guy. He plays various musical instruments that he taught himself how to play. He's like really good at math, at figuring things out. He is amazing craftsman and an artist. He, like any sport, he would play it well. He's always been a valued player on his team. He plays soccer mostly. So I honestly don't know why a person is gifted so many gifts. But what's interesting about that is that he doesn't need to live his life through his kids. He doesn't have those complex that he did not accomplish something and now he has to push his kids hard to, somehow validate his own ego in any way.
Yeah.
So that's good that way. And he's taught himself many things, so he knows how unschooling works. And both him and I were good students when we were in school, and we got like really disillusioned with the whole system, and not just school, many systems, medical system, whatever system. Yeah, and so that's kind of his journey. And he is the kind of guy, he just loves spending time with the kids. He always has energy to play with them. He is silly with them. He loves to mentor them in a very loving and patient way. And he brings so much joy into their life. And we're just very lucky to have him.
Oh, that's very sweet. Oh, I love that. I love your observation how he about bringing a layer of our own expectations, to our children, and because we can even subtly find ourselves kind of nudging them in directions that will feel satisfying to us. So I love that observation. So how has your relationship with your children changed since you guys began unschooling?
So, like I said, before I was trying to, control how the kids are, control even, my relationship with Igor. And after realizing that, and sometimes, like I would get blindsided by an issue and not even realize that the issue is there.
Yeah.
Or like let go of a layer and not realizing that there is a bigger layer underneath that I'm not even seeing yet, and how letting go of that made his and my relationship so much better, and just allowing him to be as a person, and make his own decisions, and Same with the kids. Uh,
It
so
relates well with that story you told about Daniel too, right? When you
yeah,
chose to join him, how much more connected your relationship became at that point. Certainly around that. And I imagine that kind of opened up since that was a huge interest for him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that I am just able to be more present
Mhm.
and more with them and more focused truly on their interests, and not how to provide more information for that interest for them to learn something, but because they just want that information, because that would feed their joy, and it's joyous to me to see their joy,
I
like it's
love
their
that
life.
observation. Yeah, because it really doesn't, you really lose the need to do anything for the learning, right?
Yeah,
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 it's about following their joy, their excitement. Yes, because you love to see them light up, and you love to help them pursue the things that they're excited about. And then every once in a while, when you think learning, it's like, oh yeah, they're learning tons.
that's it. That's it.
That's
And it's for all of them. It's for Valerie, it's for Daniel, it's for Igor. Yeah, you want to do this. And it was actually interesting because Igor, he got very randomly recruited by an agency, and he started to act on the side. And he found that when you're starting something like that, when you're 35 and you have no professional training, um, it's tough. Like, it's not that you can just show up and act. You do want some training. And he came to Valerie's theory rehearsal, and she has an amazing uh, director, just an amazing mentor to her and to everybody who's involved in that community theater. And Igor observed one of their rehearsals, and he said, like, how awesome, like, I wish I had something like that. And I said, Igor, you have something like that. This is community theater. You can join anytime you want. He's like, oh, so he joined. He now on the board of directors. He has so much fun with this, group of people. And that's his joy.
oh, I love that observation. You can join. This is community theater. And that your daughter's doing it, right? I love so much. That's when we talk about unschooling is living in the world now, right? That's one of the ways you kind of describe it. School is preparing them to live in the real world, and we're just choosing to live in the real world now and learn along the way as we're doing it. And there are so many opportunities out there within the community that so often before we don't even consider, right? Because we're busy with our kids, and kids are supposed to do school and do their extracurricular activities that are geared just for them. But when you step away from that and just look for opportunities to engage with the community, there's all sorts of interests. Like, I know sometimes I would take the kids to things, and they weren't expecting to have children come of their own choice and show up, but so often they were very welcoming, right? Because it's a shared interest, something that they're interested in learning about, and a curious person, no matter their age, who wants to learn more about something that they're already there because they're passionate about that interest, right? Theater, for as an example, right? It really doesn't matter, and there's so many opportunities there for our kids to engage with others who share the same kinds of interests. I love that Igor and Valerie are both there.
Well, Valerie wasn't sure at the beginning she would want him there, because for
Yeah.
Valerie, yeah, she's the only extrovert in our family, and she always looks for ways to connect with people and
Mhm.
to even like do her own thing. And I think theater was giving her that space where she would go like on a Sunday and be there for 5 hours, and go with her girlfriends to a vending machine and run around and get in trouble and, giggle it off. And she was having fun with that.
Yeah.
And then when Igor was going to join, she wasn't sure if she would want a dad there.
Yeah.
But then he joined anyway because he wanted to do it. And she found that it was helpful sometimes having him there. Like if she gets tired, she just can lay down her head on him, or just, and he was never intrusive in what she wanted to do. He's very respectful of her space. And I think she got what she wanted out of it in terms of freedom. Like she's not looking for it anymore. And it's not, 5 hours at theater, yay, anymore. It's more like, 5 hours, you have to be there. Like it's more like she's getting more theater out of it than the freedom that she wanted before.
Yeah. Isn't it so fun to watch
maybe that's
journey?
because we also relaxed around issues that we had.
Yeah. It's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, really is. So what has surprised you most about your journey so far?
So what surprised me most was how much joy there is in being in my kids' company, in helping them along with whatever they need help with, in preparing, yummy food for them, in creating the environment that everybody wants to be in. And it's interesting that environment that I'm creating for my family, then a lot of people love to visit and just to be in the space that we create.
Yeah.
Because, like the message out there is very different. Like people post on social media how happy they are that their kids are finally in school, like come the school year, and like they're celebrating, and how they want them to go to bed early so that they can have time for themselves. And I used to think that too, like when the kids were so young. I had 2 kids under the age of 2. And I was thinking, like, once they go to school, like finally I'm going to have a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's truly surprising what a gift it is to share this life together. And I think this life can be that joyous only after you've let go of all those issues, when you're not trying to control them, when you are just there in partnership to, have fun together and just enjoy the life together.
Yeah, that's such a great point. When you get to that, like we were talking about earlier, right? Even in relationships, right? When you get to the point where you're equals, you're all human beings and you can connect with them, there is joy and fun. You're being with another person. It doesn't matter what their age is, right? You can connect and engage and have fun together.
That's it. Yeah. And I think there was also sometimes a time when I would get stuck with, what about me, and what about me, and what about my interests, and like, what am I doing with my life? But I think that the equilibrium is really towards taking care of the kids when the kids are much younger, because there is that physical aspect of mothering. Mm-hmm. But as they get older, I find that me and my interests get very intertwined with our days and the flow of our days, and everything, like everybody gets taken care of. Yeah.
I love that observation. It's so true. I mean, when you have younger kids, it is a lot of hands-on physical help, right? You're getting food and you're taking them, here and there, and you have to help them get coats on and boots on, especially in Ottawa. So it's a huge revelation when you understand that when you start to notice that, as you say, your interest just comes up because you're having conversations with them, right? You're doing just hanging out together, and the things we like naturally come up because they're often the example that we reach to when we're in a conversation. Oh, I had that happen when I was doing XYZ or whatever. And like you said, it's so beautiful how the stuff that we love intertwines with our life, because as they get older, we're having more conversations like that, right? We have a little bit more space to do things. Maybe we're whether it's art, drawing or crafting or reading or whatever, and they come in the room and they see what you're doing and you share a little update. It's really fun. That's such a cool observation.
And it's not only, it's now both ways. It's not just us sharing, now they're sharing back and supporting us in some way. Like we went for a walk as a family, and I was preparing for my very first Facebook Live interview. Mm-hmm. And I was having all these doubts and I wasn't sure how to go about it. And the kids were coaching me through it because they've seen so many live videos, and they were saying, well, this YouTuber is doing this and you have to have an intro and you have to do this and that. And I'm like, whoa, guys, like, how do you even,
Right? Absolutely. Our lives can flow together so well, when I think that's another big step, another layer is opening up, not thinking about our like adult stuff and kid stuff. That's not it. It's our stuff, the things that we are all as individuals interested in. And it's amazing the connections and just the support and the information that our kids can bring, because they're awesome.
It's that support. It's so nice to have that support and have somebody like truly care, right? It's, oh, you want to do this? Yeah, well, this is how you do it. And I really, really felt it recently, like another aha for me. Kids went to a birthday party. We dropped them off, Igor and I, and then Igor and I went for a walk we have this beautiful Gatineau Park. We went for a walk and we came across a lake with beavers, and we could just stand there and watch them. They came so close. They were swimming around and we were like taking pictures of them, like close-up pictures. It was so beautiful. And on the way back, I was walking, it was a narrow path. I was walking in the front and Igor was at the back. And I was saying, what do they eat? And Igor was like, Siri, what do beavers eat? And then Siri would tell us. And I'm like, and do they hibernate? And he would look it up. And he just kept looking up all my questions. And I felt like so nice that somebody actually took time to answer my questions, and, and I knew more and I was truly curious. And I thought, well, that's what, I should be doing for my kids, not, I don't know, or I'll look it up later. Actually look it up. Like I do, but I felt it, like that aha that I felt.
Yeah, like you're in their shoes again. back to the Anna story, right? And that feeling of having your questions being treated as valuable, right?
Yes.
As important.
Like being seen, right?
Being seen, yeah. That's beautiful. Now, our last question, what's your favorite thing about your unschooling days right now? Just a little snapshot.
Sure. So I was thinking recently that I am really enjoying my kids at the moment. I always enjoy them, but I just really, really like it right now. I don't know if it's going to change, if it's always going to be like that, like it is right now. Like the kids are 10 and 8 at the moment, and that they're still, so innocent, but at the same time mature enough to have in-depth conversations that weave from one subject to the next, and they are mentally stimulating conversations that everybody is enjoying. I like, waking up together and chatting about the dreams that we had the night before. I love when we have slow days at home, and the activities that the kids have at the moment are also the ones that they truly, truly wanted and that they truly, truly enjoy. And then when they enjoy them so much, then it brings me joy watching them. That's kind of it. I don't know if you wanted to know any specifics or...
No. I love that. Like, it's really, you're really enjoying your connection and your relationship and just how you guys are being together. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, yeah, that's beautiful. And that kind of relates back to, you were talking about how when they're younger, it's more hands-on, it's more physical stuff. But then as they get older, it's so much more about, because they can take care of a lot of the self-care stuff. And now it's more about conversations and connections and observations and support and just engaging with each other more, like you said, mentally rather than physically, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's brilliant.
And it's observing, like there would be times where kids would struggle with something, like be shy to approach people or be shy to make friends. But right now, Daniel, he likes to scoot, and he noticed that skate clubs that kids would come with friends and they would scoot together, like scooter together, and exchange tips and tricks. And he would watch them and say, I want to have friends like that. I want to have friends of the similar interests. And I said, well, why don't we create our own scooter club with the homeschooling community and see who comes out, and maybe you'll make connections that way. And we did. At the end of August, we called out to people who wanted to come, and the same group of people comes once a week now for 2.5 months. And at the beginning, the kids weren't sure, and, they were talking, but it wasn't as close. But on Tuesday, this Tuesday, I think so, that we were there, and I saw kids separated in little groups and coupled here and coupled there, just chatting away and like really enjoying each other, and those relationships are growing. And it's just so nice to see and observe.
Oh, wow. That's a great example. Yeah. That's another great example too of, just creating an environment like you talked about at the beginning, how you love creating, your environment at home. And it's just, let's create an opportunity and see what comes of it. Right. And if nothing really came of it, you try something else. Right. It's just kind of exploring. It's the kind of the flow that we get into, isn't it? As we're trying to, create or connect or find the things that we think we're wanting, right? He was wanting to connect with some other kids around the scooters, and you created an opportunity to see what would come of it. That's a really great approach. Hi. So I want to say thank you very much for letting your mom speak to me today. I had a lot of fun, Tatiana. Thanks so much for sharing so many great insights about your deschooling journey. It was awesome to hear them. And I know you've got a new project going on now too. And can you share with people where they can connect with you online and find you there?
Yeah, sure. I am most present on Facebook as Tatiana Plechenko. I created a blog that is very new, a baby blog. I have only 2 posts there. It's soulfulconnections.ca, and it also has a presence on Facebook. There is a page, Soulful Connections. So those are the best ways to find me.
Oh, that's awesome. I will put those links in the show notes. And thanks so much, Tatiana. I really appreciate you spending time with me. Bye.
Thanks so much, Pam. Bye.